Imagine holding a simple coin in your hand, one that most people would toss into their pocket without a second thought. A coin minted in 1984 that bears the familiar face of Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, a man whose vision for America helped shape the very foundation of the nation. And yet, this Jefferson nickel is more than just 5 cents of face value. It is a small metallic time capsule, a piece of American history struck in copper and nickel during a decade, defined by cultural change, economic transformation, and political tension. The 1980s were years of innovation, from the birth of the personal computer age to the expansion of American influence around the world, and each nickel minted in 1984 carries within it a reflection of the values, struggles, and ambitions of that era. When we look at the Jefferson nickel of 1984, we are not only examining a piece of metal, but also a continuation of a story that began in 1938 when the design was first introduced. Replacing the Buffalo nickel designed by James Earl Fraser, the Jefferson nickel was created by sculptor Felix Schlag, whose design featured the left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and the famous Monticello, his Virginia home, on the reverse. By the time 1984 arrived, this design had been in circulation for nearly half a century, and it remained a familiar sight in the hands of millions of Americans. Yet coins minted in any given year hold secrets and stories that can only be uncovered when we step back and consider their context. The 1984 Jefferson nickel was struck at 3 major mint facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each with its own purpose and production levels. Philadelphia produced millions of circulation strikes without a mint mark. Denver added the familiar D, and San Francisco struck the high-quality proof coins for collectors. These differences in mint marks are more than tiny letters. They are keys to understanding rarity, demand, and the historical footprint of the coinage system in America. In that year, millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels were struck to meet the growing needs of an expanding economy, but the survival of pristine coins in top grades remained rare, making certain examples today far more valuable than their 5-cent denomination. To appreciate the true significance of the 1984 Jefferson nickel, one must look deeper into the events of the year itself. America was in the middle of Ronald Reagan's presidency, a period marked by economic recovery after the struggles of the late 1970s. Inflation was stabilizing, industries were growing, and confidence in the American dollar was strong. Yet there was also unease about global affairs as the Cold War loomed. Large coins minted in 1984 circulated among citizens who were buying new technologies like VCRs and early computers, who were witnessing the rise of blockbuster films, and who were navigating a society in the midst of rapid change. Every nickel exchanged hands as part of this daily rhythm of life, becoming silent witnesses to the moments that shaped the era. For collectors today, the 1984 Jefferson nickel is fascinating because it represents a bridge between the old and the new. The design had not yet seen the dramatic redesigns and commemorations of the 2000s, but it had already become a multi-decade classic. Coins from 1984 are commonly found in circulation, yet condition is everything. While a worn example is worth only face value, high-grade mint-state nickels, especially those certified by professional grading services, can command strong premiums, with prices reaching into the hundreds of dollars for flawless specimens. Proof coins from San Francisco add another dimension. Their mirror-like surfaces and sharp strikes make them highly desirable to those who appreciate artistry and precision in numismatics. But beyond condition and value, the deeper story lies in symbolism. Jefferson's portrait reminds us of the ideals of liberty, knowledge, and independence, his vision of an agrarian republic, his role in drafting the Declaration of Independence, and his belief in the pursuit of enlightenment, all tied to Monticello, the structure that symbolizes not only his home, but also his legacy of architecture, innovation, and complex contradictions. The Jefferson nickel of 1984 thus becomes more than a coin. It becomes a reminder of American identity and history. To build a full picture of this coin, we can explore its production process. The planchets of copper-nickel alloy prepared by the United States Mint were struck by high-tonnage presses that imprinted Jefferson's likeness and Monticello with tremendous force. Quality control and short circulation pieces were ready for commerce, while proof coins underwent multiple strikes to achieve their reflective finish. These details matter because they connect us to the craftsmanship and precision behind every coin, something most people overlook when they see only a small piece of change errors and varieties from 1984. Also at intrigue, double die-up versus repunched mint marks and other striking anomalies create rarity within the series for collectors willing to search through pocket change or bulk rolls. These small differences turn ordinary coins into treasures worth far more than their denomination. This pursuit has kept Jefferson nickels a popular collecting series and ensures that even a common date, like 1984, can contain gems hiding in plain sight. Jefferson nickel of 1984 has now been circulating for more than 4 decades, yet it still endures as both a functional part of commerce and a collectible piece of history. When we trace its origins from the design choices of Felix Schlag through the minting processes of Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and then place it in the larger context of American history during the 1980s, we begin to see the coin as a reflection of a nation in motion, its economy, its politics, its culture, all compressed into a 5-cent piece. This is why the 1984 Jefferson nickel deserves attention, because it is not just a coin, it is a narrative in metal, a bridge between the America of Jefferson and the America of Reagan, between the early 20th century vision of coinage and the late 20th century realities of global power and domestic change. Every scratch on a circulated example, every shimmering proof surface from San Francisco, and every high-grade survivor tells us a story of endurance and meaning. So, as we dive deeper into the world of old quarters, dollar value, and specifically the Jefferson nickels of 1984, we are not simply cataloging mint marks and prices. We are unlocking history, culture, craftsmanship, and legacy. And when you finish exploring the details of this coin, you will never again look at a nickel the same way, for it is not just a piece of change, but a living relic of America's journey through time. In the world of American coinage, every single date, every single mint mark, and every single design carries with it a story that stretches far beyond the metal we hold in our hand, and one of the coins that quietly but powerfully represents the legacy of 20th century U.S. history is the Jefferson nickel from the year 1986. When most people see a nickel, they see 5 cents, a small coin that often gets passed around in change without much thought. But to those who understand the story of the American mint, the designers, the engravers, the collectors, and the history that shaped the coin, this small piece of copper-nickel alloy becomes a living record of the United States, and the Jefferson nickel of 1986 is no exception. It was a coin struck at a time when America was in the last stretch of the Cold War. Ronald Reagan was in the White House, the country was riding a wave of economic shifts, and the world was preparing for massive technological change. Yet in your pocket, one of the most consistent reminders of American identity was the face of Thomas Jefferson, designed decades earlier by Felix Schlag in 1938, and still serving as the front of the nickel in 1986. To appreciate this coin, we must go back to 1938, when the U.S. Mint launched a competition to design a new 5-cent piece to replace the beloved Buffalo nickel. Felix Schlag, a German immigrant artist, submitted a design featuring the left-facing bust of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Jefferson's Monticello home on the reverse, and it became one of the longest-running designs in American coinage history. So by the time we reach 1986, this design had been in circulation for nearly half a century unchanged, a familiar constant for generations of Americans. In 1986, the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were all producing these nickels. Philadelphia struck millions without a mint mark, as it did for most of its history. Denver produced with the D mint mark, and San Francisco produced proof coins for collectors carrying the S mint mark. And what makes this year interesting for collectors is not only the sheer volume of coins, but also the conditions in which they survived. Jefferson nickel of 1986 continues to tell us about minting technology of the time. These were struck in copper-nickel alloy with a weight of 5 grams and a diameter of 21.2 millimeters. The design details were often weak around Jefferson's hair and Monticello's steps, which means well-struck coins from this year are actually harder to find than one might think. Many nickels from 1986 that circulated heavily show flatness and dullness, but for the collector seeking mint-state examples with sharp steps on Monticello known as full steps, these coins carry a premium in the numismatic market. Let us pause to look at Jefferson himself, the man whose face has been on the nickel since 1938. Jefferson was the third president of the United States, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, and a figure whose contributions to architecture, science, politics, and philosophy still echo through history. The decision to place him on the nickel in 1938 was not random. It was part of a broader cultural moment where America wanted to tie its coinage directly to its founding ideals. So when you hold a 1986 nickel, you are not just holding a 5-cent piece, you are holding an everyday tribute to Jefferson's role in building the republic. The Monticello on the reverse is another story in itself. Designed by Jefferson, it represents neoclassical ideals drawn from Roman architecture. It was his home in Virginia, and it was a symbol of his intellectual curiosity and vision. When Schlag included it on the coin, he cemented Monticello as one of the most recognizable buildings in U.S. numismatics. By 1986, millions of Americans who had never been to Virginia or studied Jefferson's architectural pursuits could still recognize Monticello simply because they saw it every day on their nickels. But what about the numbers? In 1986, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 400 million nickels, while Denver struck nearly 500 million, and San Francisco produced proof sets in far smaller numbers. That difference matters for collectors, because while circulated coins are easy to find, uncirculated and proof examples, especially with strong strikes, are more limited. And when grading agencies like PCGs and NGC evaluate these coins, they look closely at details like luster strike and the number of steps on Monticello to assign a grade that can turn a 5-cent coin into a piece worth tens or even hundreds of dollars. Beyond the minting numbers, let us consider what was happening in America in 1986. This was the year of the Challenger space shuttle tragedy, which deeply impacted the American spirit. It was the year the Statue of Liberty celebrated its centennial after a major restoration project. It was a period when Cold War tensions were high, yet talks between Reagan and Gorbachev were beginning to change the future. The economy was shifting with the rise of Wall Street culture, and the personal computer was making its way into American homes. While all this was happening, nickels were still being struck, still being spent in vending machines, gas stations, and supermarkets. Everyday objects grounding Americans in the physical world of commerce, even as technology was racing forward. For numismatists, the 1986 Jefferson nickel is a window into this era. Coins like this are historical anchors. They do not just tell us the date, they connect us to the cultural, financial, and political landscape of their time. If you examine a 1986 proof nickel under magnification, you will see mirror-like fields and frosted devices crafted with precision for collectors. If you look at a well-worn 1986 circulation nickel, you are reminded of its journey through the hands of ordinary Americans. Each scratch and nick a silent witness to everyday history. The Jefferson nickel has often been called the workhorse of American coinage, and in 1986, it was exactly that. Millions in circulation, durable, consistent, and ever-present. Yet for collectors today studying die varieties, minting errors, and condition rarities, these nickels become treasures. Some errors from 1986 include off-center strikes and die cracks, which, although not extremely common, can elevate the value dramatically when found. The legacy of the 1986 Jefferson nickel, not about rarity, but about continuity. It represents the endurance of Felix Schlag's design, the continued reverence for Jefferson, and the way a simple 5-cent coin could carry so much history forward. When you line up nickels from the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, and then the 1980s, you see America's story unfolding through one unchanged design. And in that consistency, there is meaning. It is A reminder that some symbols remain constant even as the world around them transforms. So, when you watch this channel Old Quarters Dollar Value and you dive into the details of coins, like the 1986 Jefferson nickel, you are not just learning about metal and mint marks. You are learning about America itself, its people, its history, its ideals, and its identity, captured in small, circular form. The Jefferson nickel may be small, but its story is massive, stretching across centuries of design, politics, and culture, and the 1986 issue remains one of the strongest links in that chain. Imagine holding in your hand a simple nickel dated 1995. A small coin that most people would spend without a second thought. Yet behind that Jefferson nickel lies a story that stretches across the history of the United States, its economic struggles, its cultural identity, and the ever-changing world of coin collecting. Today, on Old Quarters Dollar Value, we take a deep dive into the Jefferson nickel of 1995 and uncover everything from its origin to its design, its circulation to its rarity, and its place in the broader history of American coinage. To truly understand the 1995 Jefferson nickel, we must begin with the history of the Jefferson nickel itself. First minted in 1938, when it replaced the Buffalo nickel, this coin was introduced, not only to honor the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, but also to celebrate Monticello, his Virginia estate, which has become an enduring symbol of American history. The design was created by Felix Schlag, a German-born sculptor, who won the public competition to design the new coin, and his portrait of Jefferson, along with the depiction of Monticello, would go on to grace American currency for decades, becoming one of the longest-running designs in United States mint history. By the time we arrive at 1995, the Jefferson nickel had already been in circulation for nearly 6 decades. Yet, what makes the coins of this particular year so fascinating is how they reflect both the economic climate of the 1990s and the mint's production processes. The 1990s were a time of economic growth in the United States, a decade defined by new technology, globalization, and shifting cultural dynamics. And while nickels might seem like just pocket change, they were being struck in the billions at the time to fuel an economy where cash transactions still dominated daily life, unlike today where digital payments are everywhere. The nickel in 1995 was essential for vending machines, for payphones, for everyday change at the grocery store. These nickels passed through countless American hands, and in doing so they became silent witnesses to the life of a nation. In terms of mintage, the United States Mint struck Jefferson nickels in 1995 at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. The Philadelphia coins bear no mint mark, while the Denver nickels carry the familiar D mint mark. Collectors often compare the two mintages to examine differences in strike quality, luster, and availability, and when considering proof versions struck at the San Francisco Mint, these coins showcase a mirror-like finish designed specifically for collectors. The proof 1995 nickels highlight the artistry of the original Schlag design in a way that circulation strikes simply can't attire it. Beyond the basics of mintage lies the deeper story of how these coins are valued in the world of numismatics. Condition, rarity, and demand all play a part. While billions of 1995 nickels were produced, high-grade examples that remain uncirculated with sharp details and clean surfaces are far scarcer than one might expect. Such coins can fetch significant premiums, especially when graded by professional services collectors. Prize coins that achieve top designations like Mint State 67 or higher, because they are rare survivors from a production process that by its very nature mass-produced millions of coins meant for circulation. Must also consider the errors and varieties of the 1995 Jefferson nickel coin. Errors can transform an ordinary 5-cent piece into a prize collectible. Double dies, off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, and even planchet flaws can all create varieties that collectors eagerly seek. A simple doubling on Jefferson's profile or the word Monticello can drastically increase the value of a coin, turning a nickel worth 5 cents into one worth hundreds or even thousands. These anomalies remind us that minting is a process of incredible precision, but also one susceptible to fascinating human and mechanical Imperfection. 1995 nickel also carries cultural significance because it was minted during the last decade before major changes came to the design of the coin, beginning in 2004, when the Westward Journey nickel series was introduced. Jefferson's portrait and Monticello would undergo redesigns and modernizations, but in 1995 Americans were still spending the classic Schlag design, one that generations had grown up with and taken for granted. In this way, the 1995 nickel serves as a bridge between eras, linking the traditional mid-20th century coinage with the more modern 21st century designs. Collectors who study the 1995 nickel also gain insight into the broader trends of coin collecting in the 1990s. This was a time before the explosion of online coin markets, before eBay, before the wide availability of population reports and grading data. Collectors in the 1990s often relied on local coin shops, coin shows, and printed guides to assess value. The hobby was growing, yet still rooted in personal connections and face-to-face transactions, and so the 1995 nickel represents not just a coin, but a moment in numismatic history when collecting was transitioning from a traditional community to a more global digital marketplace. Another layer to the story lies in the role of the U.S. Mint itself. In 1995, the Mint was preparing for monumental projects ahead, such as the 50-state quarters program that would launch in 1999. The Jefferson nickel of this year, then, is not only a coin but part of the Mint's broader efforts to modernize production and prepare for one of the most successful and widely collected coin series in American history. Studying the 1995 nickel gives us a snapshot of a mint in transition, balancing tradition with innovation. If we look deeper still, we find that the Jefferson nickel itself embodies the values of Thomas Jefferson, whose legacy is woven into the fabric of American identity. Jefferson was a founding father, author of the Declaration of Independence, advocate of education and enlightenment, and also a complex figure whose life and actions continue to be debated to this day. By placing his portrait on the nickel, the United States not only honored a president, but also placed into circulation a constant reminder of the ideals and contradictions of the nation he helped shape. Every time an American in 1995 used a nickel, they carried with them a small piece of Jefferson's story. Ultimately, the 1995 Jefferson nickel is more than just a piece of change. It is a coin that represents art, history, economics, and culture. It is a window into the past, a reminder of a transitional decade, and a collectible that continues to fascinate coin enthusiasts around the world. On old quarters dollar value, we peel back the layers of history surrounding this unassuming coin and reveal the depth of meaning and value it holds. So whether you are a seasoned collector searching for mint state rarities, a casual enthusiast curious about the coins in your pocket, or simply someone who loves history, the 1995 Jefferson nickel offers a journey that stretches far beyond its small size and humble denomination. This is not just a nickel, it is a story waiting to be told, and today we will tell it in full. In the year 2001, the United States Mint continued its long and storied tradition of striking Jefferson nickels, a coin that had already stood for more than 6 decades as one of the most recognizable pieces of American change. The Jefferson nickel, first introduced in 1938, replaced the Buffalo nickel and was designed by sculptor Felix Schlag to honor the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, a man whose legacy as the author of the Declaration of Independence, statesman, diplomat, and visionary farmer would resonate across the nation for centuries. The obverse of this nickel carried Jefferson's portrait, and the reverse featured his beloved Monticello, his Virginia home, that symbolized not only his personal life, but also his ideals of republicanism, liberty, and agrarian values. By 2001, the Jefferson nickel was already an iconic coin, a piece of pocket change familiar to millions of Americans. But behind its seemingly ordinary appearance lay an extraordinary story of history, art, politics, economics, and even global change. The nickel itself had become a window into American society, spanning world wars, economic shifts, and cultural transformation. When collectors look at the 2001 Jefferson nickel, they are not merely holding a piece of 5-cent currency. They are holding the last years of a design that was on the brink of dramatic transformation within just a few years. In 2004 and 2005, the United States Mint would launch the Westward Journey series, commemorating the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition and Jefferson's vision of Western expansion, which meant that the 2001 nickel was among the final strikes of the original Schlag design before it would undergo its first major redesign in over 60 years. This makes the 2001 issue historically significant because it represents the closing chapter of a long and stable era in American coinage, before the redesigns of the early 21st century fully understand the 2001 Jefferson nickel. One must look back at why the nickel was created in the first place. The very idea of a 5-cent coin emerged during the mid-19th century when America transitioned away from silver half-dimes toward base metal coins. In 1866, following the Civil War, Congress authorized the first 5-cent nickel coin, made of copper and nickel, a decision that was as much about economic practicality as it was about politics. The industrialist Joseph Wharton, who controlled America's nickel mines, pushed hard for the adoption of the new alloy, giving rise to the coin that would eventually become the foundation of what we now know as the nickel series. By the 20th century, the 5-cent piece had grown into one of the workhorses of American commerce, circulating in vast numbers and facilitating everyday trade. And when the Jefferson nickel replaced the Buffalo nickel in 1938, it cemented itself as a symbol of American identity. By 2001, the Jefferson nickel was struck at 3 United States Mint facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Philadelphia coins carried no mint mark, Denver bore the D mint mark, and San Francisco produced proof issues with the S mint mark. For collectors, these differences may appear small, but they are crucial for numismatists who analyze rarity and mintage figures. The Philadelphia Mint produced hundreds of millions of Jefferson nickels in 2001, Denver contributed an equally large output, and San Francisco struck limited proof coins. Designed with mirror-like finishes for coin sets, the proofs of 2001 are considered some of the most visually stunning examples of modern Jefferson nickels, because they display exceptional sharpness and lustrous value of a 2001 Jefferson nickel. Depends on condition, strike, and rarity. In circulated condition, these coins are worth their face value of 5 cents, but when preserved in pristine mint state grades such as Ms. 65, Ms. 66, or higher, they can command collector premiums. For example, a flawless 2001 nickel with a strong strike and no contact marks might be valued significantly higher than face value, particularly in third-party graded holders certified by PCGs or NGC. The proof coins from San Francisco carry even more appeal among collectors because of their limited numbers and exceptional quality buy-in value. The history tied to the 2001 nickel carries deeper meaning. Jefferson's legacy connects directly to the ideals of liberty, exploration, and knowledge. His Monticello home depicted on the coin stands as a national monument to American architecture and philosophy. Every time someone held a 2001 nickel, they unknowingly carried Jefferson's vision for America, a vision that included education, westward expansion, and scientific curiosity. The fact that this coin design remained largely unchanged for over 60 years also symbolizes continuity in a nation that witnessed wars, economic depressions, social upheavals, and technological revolutions. In numismatic history, 2001 sits on the eve of change. The Mint was preparing to modernize coin designs. The State Quarters program was already underway, captivating Americans and sparking an explosion in coin collecting. At the same time, discussions were growing about updating the Jefferson nickel to reflect new themes. The Westward Journey redesign would follow just a few years later, and by 2006, a completely new forward-facing portrait of Jefferson by Jamie Franke would replace Felix Schlag's classical design. So when you examine the 2001 Jefferson nickel, you are not only studying a coin, you are studying the threshold between the old and the new, the last of a lineage before the Mint embarked on redesigning American coinage for a new century. collector who builds a set of Jefferson nickels and pauses at 2001 is not simply filling a hole in an album. They are recognizing the conclusion of a monumental era. Coins like these remind us that money is more than just commerce. It is art, history, politics, and symbolism all pressed into metal. Each 2001 Jefferson nickel is a survivor of a specific time in America at the dawn of the 21st century, a time when the nation stood between the comfort of tradition and the anticipation of change. If we were to stretch this story into the kind of 2-hour exploration worthy of deep historical analysis, we could explore Jefferson's biography in depth, how his vision for the American Republic influenced not only the design of the nickel, but the very soul of the nation. We could trace the production process of the mint in 2001, the die-making technology, the methods of striking proof coins, the metal composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, and how this alloy has stood the test of time, resisting corrosion and serving everyday Americans faithfully. We could dive into the economics of coin production in the early 2000s, the cost of making coins, inflation, the mint's role in circulating billions of nickels, and how these coins traveled across the nation's hands from corner stores to vending machines. We could also cover the collecting world of the time, the grading standards, the rise of third-party certification, and how collectors in 2001 valued not just rarity, but perfection. Ultimately, the 2001 Jefferson nickel is more than a 5-cent piece. It is a chapter in the ongoing story of America's coinage. It represents Jefferson's ideals, Felix Schlag's artistic vision, the mint's technical craftsmanship, and the collector's eternal fascination with history and value. And for anyone who wishes to understand American coins, this nickel is an essential artifact, a reminder that even in the smallest coins we can find the largest stories. In the vast and fascinating history of American coinage, every coin tells a story not just of its metal and minting, but of the people, the nation, and the time in which it was struck. And when we turn our attention to the Jefferson nickel of 2011, we uncover a chapter that connects modern America with the legacy of one of its most brilliant founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, author of the Declaration of Independence, and a man whose ideals and vision for the nation have echoed through centuries. The Jefferson Nickel series, which began in 1938, replaced the Buffalo nickel, and it was intended to celebrate Jefferson's contribution to American history and progress. With its long run, the Jefferson nickel has witnessed changes in design, metal composition, and symbolism that reflect the changing values and needs of the nation. And the year 2011 marked a period when the nickel carried not only a renewed look, but also a deeper meaning tied to America's ongoing journey. The design history of the Jefferson nickel is a story in itself, beginning with the original portrait designed by Felix Schlag in 1938. Schlag's work featured Jefferson's profile on the obverse and his Virginia home, Monticello, on the reverse. This design remained largely unchanged for decades and became one of the most familiar coins in circulation. However, by the early 2000s, the United States Mint sought to refresh the design to honor Jefferson in a more dynamic and historically accurate way. In 2004 and 2005, the Westward Journey Nickel series brought temporary changes that depicted scenes from the Lewis and Clark expedition and a forward-facing image of Jefferson. This series bridged the old and the new while reminding Americans of exploration, expansion, and national identity. Then in 2006, the nickel settled into a new long-term design, featuring a forward-facing portrait of Jefferson with a more lifelike and approachable expression. Designed by Jamie Franke, this was a major shift from the static profile of the past. Jefferson now looked directly at the viewer, suggesting openness, vision, and leadership, a fitting portrayal for a modern America that still looked to Jefferson for inspiration. By 2011, this design had fully taken hold, and the coins minted that year carried both historical weight and a modern connection. To understand the importance of the 2011 Jefferson nickel, we must place it in context, both numismatic and historical. Jefferson's face staring forward on this coin represents not only an artistic choice, but a philosophical one. Jefferson was a man of enlightenment, but a believer in the power of the human mind, democracy, education, and the pursuit of progress. The forward-facing design, in essence, brings Jefferson into conversation with the modern American, holding the coin reminding citizens of his timeless ideals. Furthermore, the reverse continued to feature Monticello, the neoclassical home that Jefferson designed and built himself, a symbol of intellect, innovation, and architecture. Monticello stands as a monument not just to one man, but to the Enlightenment principles that shaped America, and every 2011 nickel in circulation was a tiny token of this larger story. From a collector's perspective, the 2011 Jefferson nickel has its own fascinating layers. Although the coin is modern and struck in large numbers, its varieties, mint marks, and condition play a role in determining value. Coins minted in Philadelphia bear no mint mark, while those from Denver display a D mint mark, and those from San Francisco, proof issue marked with S. Proof nickels struck for collectors often carry exceptional detail and finish, making them highly sought after. The 2011 nickels were struck in the standard copper nickel alloy, composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a formula in place since 1866, with only brief changes during World War II. The continuation of this metal composition reflects both tradition and the balance of durability and cost efficiency for everyday commerce. While the intrinsic metal value may not exceed the face value of the coin, the historical and collectible aspects elevate certain specimens into prized possessions. For numismatists, the year 2011 also falls within a fascinating period of American coinage. More broadly, this was a time when the U.S. Mint was actively experimenting with new designs and other denominations, from the state quarters program to the presidential dollars. The Mint was reminding the American people of their history through circulating currency. The Jefferson nickel of 2011 stood as part of this movement, not a redesign that year, but a reaffirmation of Jefferson's role in American life and heritage. When people spent a nickel in 2011, they were touching not only a piece of metal, but a piece of American identity rooted in Jefferson's philosophy of liberty, self-government, and knowledge. To appreciate how this coin fits into Jefferson's larger legacy, we must look deeper into his life. Jefferson was not only the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, but also a diplomat, governor, vice president, president, and the founder of the University of Virginia. He envisioned a nation of farmers and free citizens, empowered by education and protected from tyranny. His belief in limited government, individual rights, and expansion through peaceful means shaped the trajectory of the young republic, though his legacy is also complicated by the fact that he was a slaveholder who wrestled with contradictions between ideals and reality. The decision to place Jefferson on the nickel in 1938 was intended to honor his monumental contributions while also linking his image with the denomination used by every citizen on a daily basis. By the time the 2011 nickel was struck, Jefferson's forward-facing portrait seemed to capture the enduring relevance of his ideas, looking not backward, but directly into the future. Collectors often ask what makes a 2011 Jefferson nickel valuable, and while most circulated examples are worth only face value, certain conditions, mint errors, and proof issues can raise the worth dramatically. For example, high-grade nickels graded by professional services can bring in premiums, especially in mint state 67 or higher. Error coins such as off-center strikes, double dies, or planchet flaws also attract serious attention among numismatists. Proof nickels with mirror-like finishes and sharp details from the San Francisco Mint are always collectible, and in pristine condition, they can command significant value. The hunt for such coins reflects the larger human fascination with rarity, quality, and historical significance. But beyond collector value, the Jefferson nickel of 2011 holds cultural meaning. It reminds us that history is alive, not locked away in textbooks, but circulating in our hands. Every time someone used a nickel in 2011 or today, they were unknowingly participating in a chain that stretches back through Jefferson's lifetime, through the mint's history, through the many hands that shaped American commerce. From market stalls to factories to schools, this small coin connects daily life with the grand sweep of national identity. And this is why exploring its history in detail is not just a matter of numismatics, but of understanding America itself. The Jefferson nickel of 2011 stands as a continuation of tradition, a symbol of Jefferson's enduring influence, and a reminder that even the smallest coins carry the weight of history. From its origins in the late 1930s, through its redesigns in the 2000s, and into its modern strikes, it tells a story of artistry, philosophy, commerce, and democracy. When you hold one, you are holding more than 5 cents. You are holding the face of a man who dreamed of a republic of free citizens, educated and engaged, and the home that he built as a monument to those ideals. Monticello expanded into a full exploration. We could delve into the details of minting technology, how the dies were engraved, how planchets were prepared and struck, how proof coins were polished and preserved. We could examine the economic climate of 2011, the lingering effects of the financial crisis, how coins still played a role in commerce despite the rise of digital payments, and how the mint continued to adapt. We could explore Jefferson's philosophy more deeply, his writings on liberty, education, and governance, and how they resonate with modern America. We could analyze how coin collectors view modern nickels compared to older series, and how market trends shift over time with interest in errors, high grades, and complete sets. All of these dimensions would fill hours of storytelling, and each one would reveal a new layer of understanding. 2011 Jefferson nickel, therefore, is not just a coin. It is a gateway into history, philosophy, economics, art, and the ongoing story of the American people. And it serves as a reminder that even in the smallest details, like the change in your pocket, there is a world of meaning waiting to be discovered. And when explored in full depth, the Jefferson nickel of 2011 can indeed sustain a long and fascinating journey through history, lasting hours of storytelling and capturing the imagination of anyone who seeks to understand the past through the coins that carry it forward. Imagine holding in your hand a simple Jefferson nickel from the year 2021, a coin so ordinary in everyday life that it slips through the cracks of attention, passing from hand to hand without much thought. Yet within that small piece of metal lies a vast story of American history, artistry, economics, politics, and culture. And that is exactly what we are going to unfold in today's long journey here on Old Quarters Dollar Value, as we dive deep into the Jefferson nickels of 2021 to uncover the history behind them, the reason they were struck, the designs they carry, the minting processes that shaped them, the economic backdrop of their creation, and the collector significance they hold today. The Jefferson nickel has always carried with it more than just the value of 5 cents. It has been a mirror reflecting the United States as it evolved decade after decade, carrying the face of one of America's most important founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, and paired with iconic imagery like Monticello. The 2021 Jefferson nickel continues a lineage that stretches back to 1938, when it first replaced the Buffalo nickel and marked a new era in American coinage. But in order to fully understand why the 2021 Jefferson nickel is significant, we must step back and see the world into which it was born. The year 2021 was not an ordinary time for the United States. It was a year marked by social changes, political divisions, global health challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic, and ongoing economic shifts that impacted everything from how people worked to how they spent money. Even the coinage system felt ripples from this time. Shortages of circulating coins created new attention around everyday change and the role of nickels, dimes, and quarters in commerce. In fact, the Federal Reserve and U.S. Mint had to encourage Americans to release coins back into circulation, making people realize that the very coins they overlooked held importance beyond what most ever thought. The Jefferson nickel stood right in the middle of the story, being minted in both Philadelphia and Denver, with hundreds of millions of examples produced. Yet, despite its wide mintage, the 2021 Jefferson nickel carries nuances for collectors, from mint marks to strike quality, from die varieties to special finishes like the San Francisco minted proof versions. These differences form the foundation of its collector appeal. Now, when we talk about the design, we must acknowledge the enduring portrait of Jefferson that has been present on the nickel for decades, but underwent refinements over time. The 2021 nickel carries the forward-facing portrait of Jefferson introduced in 2006, designed by Jamie Franke, a bold and direct image of the third president of the United States staring out with intensity across generations, his name Liberty inscribed in Jefferson's own handwriting along with the motto "In God We Trust," and the date 2021, together form a connection not only to the man himself, but also to the ideals he stood for. On the reverse side, the nickel continues to honor Monticello Jefferson's Virginia home designed by Felix Schlag, the original sculptor of the Jefferson nickel, whose vision has remained tied to the coin for more than 80 years. In 2021, that imagery carries symbolic weight, reminding collectors and citizens alike of Jefferson's role, only as a president, but also as an architect, inventor, writer, and thinker. This fusion of portrait and building serves as a reminder that coins are miniature documents of history, carrying forward stories that extend beyond their small surface. As we move deeper into the history of the 2021 nickel, we must also explore its technical details. The coin is composed of a copper-nickel alloy, 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it the durability and silvery appearance that defines the denomination. It weighs 5 grams, measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter, and has a plain edge. These details may seem mechanical, but they root the coin in a long tradition of standardization that allows every nickel to be interchangeable and reliable. Within the U.S. economy, the Philadelphia Mint and Denver Mint carried the primary load of production, each striking hundreds of millions of coins, while the San Francisco Mint struck proof versions for collectors packaged within annual proof sets. These proof coins feature mirror-like fields and frosted designs, elevating the humble nickel into an object of beauty and artistry, and when placed under magnification, they reveal the craftsmanship of the engravers and die makers who ensure even the tiniest detail is sharp and balanced. In addition to regular strikes and proofs, the year 2021 also saw heightened interest in coin collecting as Americans turned to hobbies during the pandemic, creating new waves of demand for coin sets and driving more attention to even the most modern issues. Collectors began scouring rolls of nickels for errors, double dies, off-center strikes, and other anomalies that can make a single coin worth many times its face value, and that is one of the great mysteries of numismatics. Even a coin as common as the 2021 Jefferson nickel can become rare and valuable under the right circumstances, whether it is a misaligned die, clipped planchet, or a remarkable proof-like strike from business dies. These tiny quirks transform ordinary change into treasure. As we trace this story back to Jefferson himself, we realize that this coin embodies not just a likeness of a man, but the essence of an era. Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, statesman, diplomat, president, philosopher, and founder of the University of Virginia, left behind a legacy that is vast and sometimes controversial, yet his place on the nickel continues to symbolize both the aspirations and contradictions of American history. By 2021, Jefferson had already adorned the 5-cent piece for over 8 decades, longer than any other U.S. president on any denomination besides Lincoln on the penny and Washington on the quarter. His presence on the nickel has become a constant companion to generations of Americans who may never realize that the face staring back at them belongs to a man who penned the immortal words that all men are created equal, yet lived in a society where such ideals were not fully realized. The Jefferson nickel of 2021, therefore, is not just a coin, it is a bridge between past and present, carrying with it layers of symbolism, artistry, and function. Its story unfolds across history, from the early minting of the first nickels to the challenges of modern production, from the legacy of Jefferson himself to the hands of millions of Americans who use this coin in daily life. And in today's video, we are going to take that story apart piece by piece. We will examine the coin's design, history, mintage, errors, varieties, collector demand, and market value. We will dive into the significance of the proof issues and the role the coin played in circulation during a year of coin shortages. We will reflect on Jefferson's role in American history and the cultural weight his image carries, and we will connect all of these threads into a full narrative that will allow you to see that this nickel you might pass off without a second glance holds within it the power to tell the story of America in 2021 and beyond. So join me as we embark on this 2-hour deep dive into the Jefferson nickels of 2021, where every detail matters and where every coin becomes a storyteller of history, economy, and identity. Welcome to Old Quarter's Dollar Value, where coins are never just change, they are history frozen in time. Would you like me to now expand this into a full structured script broken into segments like introduction, mint history, design, economy, collector, errors, values, and conclusion, so it easily runs for 2 hours straight?